Hello folks, welcome back to some more hobby nightmares. Hope you're having a very good end to your week. I will be doing a video next Tuesday, that is this coming Tuesday, on the current debacle that is the Imperial Agents, Codex and models. Bit of a ranty one, that one, but it will be with you early next week. If you like what I do, please like the video. It means a lot to me and the channel if you could do that, because it means that the algorithm sees us more and more people can watch Hobby Nightmares, which is always a good thing. Let's jump straight in, shall we, with Daz. And Daz says, "Hi North, Deathwing Daz here. I've been enjoying listening to all the nightmare stories and thought I'd share one of my own, okay? Let me set the scene for you. This all takes place back in the days of Warhammer Fantasy. My local Games Workshop store decided to do an interesting narrative campaign idea that had been done by staff in a run of White Dwarf magazine. This started, I remember the days when White Dwarf magazine gave you really good ideas like that. I do. This started with buying an army starter box, and each month after, we had a budget to expand our armies. We got points for painting, winning games, etc. I decided I wanted to expand my Warriors of Chaos whilst taking part in this. Here is where the nightmare begins. Well, first and foremost, that is a really good way to, number one, get your customers to support your store by buying stuff, but number two, making sure that the campaign breaks out beyond the boundaries of the tabletop game. Getting points for painting models and painting units and completing things is a really good incentive in your campaign. Especially if there are more, I would have more points available for building and painting models than I would for actually winning the games. Do you know what I mean? At the end of the day, we're there to grow our collections at the end of the day, you know what I mean? Anyway, moving on. At this time, I liked the idea of my Chaos Marauders being able to come in from reserves using one of the Nurgle named characters. So I went out and bought some beads and water effects to make slime bubbles. I thought this looked really cool. However, one of the other guys who I played with said my miniatures were awful, and he made me feel like I was wasting my time. Unbeknownst to me, I had been given extra points for this round, and I found this out when I asked the manager about quitting, and he told me I was in second place and 1 point behind the person in first place, and that we all had one more game to play, and my last game was against the manager, and he was doing Bretonians. This game made all my work pay off, as he charged some of his knights into a huge block of Khorne warriors that held fast, allowing my Chaos Knights to charge his flank the very next turn, breaking his unit who tried to flee, but we chased them down and caught and destroyed them, and with that unit gone and most of his characters, his archers were next, and I easily won the game. The manager then said to me something along the lines of, and I quote, "Let's see how much fun you had in our game. See how much fun you had in our game. I didn't expect to be countercharged like that, and that is definitely my favourite game of the entire campaign." Unquote. This made my day, and about a week later, the final scores were in, and to my surprise, I'd won the entire thing, and as a prize I got a voucher. But the biggest takeaway I got from this is that you should always try new things, as long as you like it, who cares what others think. Cheers for reading this, Deathwing Daz. Well, a very bog standard hobby nightmare there, nothing wrong with that. Daz, make sure you use full stops, because that entire last paragraph for the last 2 minutes had no full stops in it, so just make sure you do that. But that's really, really cool. Listen, in any sort of grouping to do with the hobby ever, you will get people who want to run down your models. This is just a phenomenon that I've seen many times, and I'm sure people in the comment section have seen it many times too. There will always be people there who are a bit insecure about their own models and want to take it out on you by, you know, giving you critiques. Here's a thing, and sometimes I love Horus Heresy players, but sometimes I wish they would get this through their heads. If I've not asked you for feedback, don't give it. Right? Unless it's positive, then fair enough. Fair enough if you want to say, hey man, nice models, no problem, you know what I mean? But if I've not asked for a critique of what I've done and what I haven't done, don't say anything. Okay? You can say that I'm a weakling and that, you know, I need to grow thicker skin. It's not about that. It's not about that. It's just draining. Like, I didn't ask for that, dude. Like, you know, what if I'm happy with my models being as they are? Have you not thought of that? As long as they're painted, you know what I mean? Who cares, right? You know. I'm very much like that. I will never give somebody any sort of negative or critique feedback on their models unless they ask me, you know? And if it's a good model, I'll just say, that's a really nice painted model, man. Well done. You know what I mean? Because that's not going to ruin somebody's day. You don't know what you're coming across, is what I'm saying. You could be coming across a guy who's already had a terrible day. An awful day, you know? And you coming over there and going, oh, yes, I think the gold on those ultramarines is a bit too bolshy. Maybe tone it down with some Agrax Earthshade, you know? It's a bit lame, you know? Anyway, there's my critique, you know? Hopefully you take my advice. No, fuck off, you know? Like that really does annoy me when people do stuff like that. Anyway, Mark says, hi, Northern. I've recently gotten hooked on your hobby nightmare. Okay, cool. Thank you. I had one that I thought you might enjoy. First, a bit of background. I got into Warhammer Fantasy back in the early 90s by watching my older brother and his buddy play games in our basement. It worked out great for me, as I got hooked and my brother and I got to spend a lot of time playing this game over the years. We both really got into the hobby side, and would often spend many late nights chatting whilst painting. We helped each other grow and pushed each other as painters. We won Best Painter together at a doubles grand tournament, albeit much later in our lives. We weren't all that naturally talented, just persistent, and we had a lot of enthusiasm. Dude, that'll take you far. That'll take you far on the hobby. If you're persistent and you have a lot of enthusiasm, yeah, man. 40k was more expensive per mini, so we generally stuck around with fantasy. There would always seem to be two camps, and the fantasy group generally would tell us the 40ks were jerks. Despite the warnings, my brother saw some Space Marines and decided to give it a go. We were both in high school at the time, and being the hobby enthusiast he was, he decided on a custom scheme and went for a desert theme. Lots of browns and yellows. I thought the army came out really nice, and at this point we were able to put our armies down on the table and have them look pretty good and respectable with most armies across from us. That's good. So as you did in those days, we found a store that met for 40k and went on over to see what there was and who would be willing to play a teaching game with us. It was a different store than our usual one, since their 40k playtime was different than our normal fantasy playtime. I tagged along to hang out and watch, since I hadn't invested in 40k yet, but was very curious. We also had just moved to the US at the start of that summer, so hobbying was a good way to get out and do stuff, since we really didn't know people or had a lot of places to go just yet. That's cool, man. Yeah, the hobby is it's a gateway to meet other people. That's how it's always been. That's how it should be as we go through it. Anyway, we find a guy who I'll call Dan, who is willing to do an intro game with my brother. My brother starts pulling out his Marines, and as soon as Dan sees this, he starts making comments about the Berenstain Bears and calls them the Turd Marines. Okay. I don't even know what Berenstain Bears means, man. Do you mean that that's what his army was called? Because you didn't say that earlier on in the Hobby Nightmare. Do you know what I mean? I was going to say he starts making comments about his Space Marines and calls them the Turd Marines. Yeah, because they're brown, desert coloured. Right, got you. The other guys at the store jump in as well. With some of our initial assumptions confirmed, my brother decided to go through with the game. In hindsight, we'd have been better off leaving before the game. Maybe a different store would have had a better play group. There was a cool cinematic terrain set up at the store that had trenches that could generally hide Space Marines. Well, this was in the heady days, where Space Marine captains and lieutenants came with those stupid banners they wore on their backs. As this guy proceeded to trounce my brother, he was using those banners my brother had on his leader models for line of sight. I can't remember too many more details, except my brother lost, and on the drive home, we talked about how all the negatives of the Warhammer Fantasy players warned us about of 40k players in the area were indeed true. My brother went home and listed his army on eBay and went back to playing fantasy and avoided 40k like the plague for a long time. You do get, I'm telling you now, man, you do definitely get certain communities that are very like this. You know, and then you get other communities where somebody who's a sore loser or a really bad player or somebody who's not playing the game in good faith, they'll come in and generally stand out like a sore thumb. But then you get other communities, and I've been around some that have been very toxic and like this. It tends to start from one person. One person will come in and just start making comments about other people's armies, and when you don't call that out, people assume, listen, we're all nerds, and a lot of us tend to follow other people into social norms. And if you're doing that by saying it's okay to take the piss out of other people's armies, it's okay to run down other people's playstyles in front of them in a really nasty, non-constructive way, is it any wonder that the rest of the people who generally follow people into social norms take that as read, that this is the normal thing to do and what you should do, when it isn't, right? Be very careful how you act in 40k groups. As I said, many people in those groups are nerds, and nerds who will generally follow Chad's quote-unquote into behavioural norms. That means if you go into if you're one of the people watching this video and you're a normal guy, you dress well, you work out, you've got a decent job, girlfriend, all the 9 yards, and you are a well-adjusted young man and you go into playing 40k somewhere, a lot of the nerds in that community will look up to you. They will. Right? And I know many of you watching this video are in one of those two camps. Right? But a lot of the nerds in that community will look up to you. So if you start going into that community and giving a really bad attitude off, a really elitist, arrogant, jerkwad attitude, that's going to rub off on other people, and eventually that hobby space will start to resemble your attitude, and it won't be fun for you, I'm telling you. Right? With great power comes great responsibility, and looking the way you do, smelling the way you do, acting the way you do, it gives you great responsibility. You're a normie who's winning in life in Warhammer. You're the leader here to make sure that you use that responsibility, you know, considerately, yeah. Moving on. It just strikes me that the guy was such a jerk to 2 kids looking to get into the hobby. I always think about this game, and anytime I see a newcomer to the hobby, I make sure I give them a better experience than what we had had. I hate the idea of pushing people out of the hobby like this from a bad first impression. I did eventually get into 40k when the tower were released. As an engineer, I appreciate that they understand how technology works. A minor nightmare from an engineer is a mechanical system that encourages people to pray to a machine so it fixes itself. Learn to turn a wrench, brothers. My brother got back into 40k eventually as well, going hard into Blood Angels. We waged many glorious battles between each other in 40k after that. Well, that is one of my hobby nightmares. Hopefully it was a good read. Thanks, Mark. No problem, man. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Right. Detective Medical Bot says, Hey, Northern. I've been watching your channel for half a year now and thought I would contribute with my own nightmares. Shorten my alias if you wish for simplicity and take a sip of tea. Thank you. I've been in the hobby for some time now, and even though I'm a neurodivergent person with autism, since I've been in the hobby, I've seen people far stranger than me. I'm not surprised. Dude, don't run yourself down as an autistic guy, right? Some of the most normal people I know in this hobby have autism. I'm not kidding. And some of the people who are the weirdest people out there have not been diagnosed with anything. They're just weird. Okay? Anyway. But let me start at where my journey begins. The local Games Workshop store in mid-2016. After years of building stuff like ships in a bottle and model trains, I was finally at a point where I wanted to hobby not by myself anymore, but with others too. Thanks to my therapist's help with learning how to communicate better, that gave me a boost of confidence to do so. So, I did some research and found Warhammer 40k as the main thing that model makers generally do. Having read up on the lore and some rules, Jolly old me went to visit the local games workshop for more information. Tea time if you want, my friend. No, man, I've just started, so I'm all good. Now picture me approaching the door and carefully opening it. I do not trust glass doors, after all. And just then, I take a step into the shop. Screams erupt, and something big flies past my head, impacting on the door frame to my left and shattering into 1,000 pieces. I freeze up and watch in horror and panic as a brawl breaks out between two people in the store, where seconds later the store manager and 3 other customers try to intervene. Again, I'm autistic, and my lizard brain is overwhelmed with the situation, giving me one of 3 options. Number 1, have a panic attack. Lovely. Number 2, run away. Number 3, occupy myself with something else. You're autistic, you did number 3. I'm guessing you did number 3. I chose option number 3. And started to pick up the broken model and put it on a nearby table while the nearby chaos is still unfolding, with my brain noting how big and cool the model is, or was supposed to be, when it was in one piece. That's brilliant. You know, when you're like a crisis is going on, you can pick out the autistic person because they're going, right, everything's burning down. I guess I'll put out this part of the fire. Yeah, how am I best going to do that? I guess I'll get some water. Yeah, I'll go get some water. And they look really calm. I've got some water, I'll just pour it onto that bit of the fire. There's a lot more fire here. Do you know what I mean? Like, they generally aren't that bothered. Just like, yeah, you know, like loud noises annoy them and make them panic and things. But like being in a really big situation like this, you will be surprised how many autistic people just start to cope by just doing something like an action or a job that they can give themselves, you know? Like this guy's done here, he's given himself a job to pick up the model pieces and put them on the table. That calms him right down, you know? It's incredible. Anyway, I watch as one person is thrown out of the store and the manager takes the other one to the side, talking to him very sternly. The store is small, so even though he lowers his voice, I get the gist of what happened. The person still in the store, let's call him John, found a dude online who wanted to play a 40k game of 8,000 points, so bigger models could be brought out to play for once, including John's new Warlord Titan, which moments before had flown past my head. His opponent, let's call him Max, seems to have been a bad sport from the start, measuring generously, bullshitting rules, and challenging every move John made. Luckily for John, the dice god smiled upon him and he won anyway, triggering a complete meltdown of epic proportions on Max's side, throwing the Titan, to which John reacted by punching him in the face. Well, a very standard reaction. And a lot of Titan players out there will, you know, nod along to that, I think. Now would be a good time for some tea. Okay. Yeah. I wonder if YouTube put an ad there. Maybe. After being separated, Max was banned from the store and thrown out. John, on the other hand, got a ban for 2 months. No matter what, punching is never a solution, and he couldn't get money from Max because he threatened to sue for assault. All in all, the worst experience one could have for entering the hobby store for the first time, but since then, the community and manager have more than made up for it, though sometimes people do not learn. I do not know enough about what Max did after, but he did more stuff like that apparently all over town, leading to a meeting of all the hobby stores in my city where it was decided that there would be a joint code of conduct for our entire town. Bathing before tournaments and events being one rule, for instance. And a shared catalogue where if you get banned at one store, you will get banned in all stores in the city. Dude, that's a really good idea. More places should do this. Where you all get together and if someone's a real weirdo, you know, and you know what I mean, you can exchange notes and go, okay, yeah, this guy's no good, we need to ban him, right? And you have stringent but, you know, fair rules throughout. You know, bathing being one of them, yeah, okay. Being a good sport being another, yeah. Being kind to newcomers, yeah. You know, all these things that should be givens, you know, they should be a part of this, and there should be, like, you know, every store in your local area should abide by them. I like that. I like that a lot, you know. And then, you know, if one store says I'm not doing that, then you know where all the problem players are going to go, which is good. We call it the garbage bin. That's where it can be. Anyway. Which brings me to my second story, after a sip of tea. Dude, I'm going to be going to the toilet if you tell me to drink tea one more time. The most recent addition to the Code of Conduct was no hidden cameras. What? Hidden cameras? This was told to me by the manager of the non-Games Workshop hobby store in my local area, where most recently a Pride tournament was held using kill teams. The only rule to attend was a themed team producing delightful creations such as Rainbow Tau or Drag Marines. Oh god. In our city, we have quite a big lesbian and trans women community that all play 40k, Kill Team and Warcry. Sadly, you might already guess where this is going, so take a sip and prepare yourself. Dude, is it just me, but whenever we start bringing Pride and things like that into 40k, drama always follows? You know? Am I going to have to take the rest of your story with a big pinch of salt? I don't know. We've had a few of these in the past where people have been like, well, you know, and whenever they talk about a minority in the hobby, something really awful happens, you know what I mean? It's like, sorry dude, like, that's not the hobby I'm in. I don't see that. Every other hobby nightmare I definitely see happen, and I'm not going to say that whatever happens in your life doesn't happen when you send it into hobby nightmares, but, you know, if this is something really mental, I'm going to take it with a pinch of salt when I'm read on here, okay? Alright, so, one of our very special neckbeards, yes, most stereotypes sadly do fit him, he's the only person I've ever heard referring to the Adeptus Sororitas as the Emperor's Sloot Thralls. Oh god. Which rubbed me up the wrong way, as I like my nuns with guns. Okay, fair enough. Let's call this person Jack. Well, Jack set up a camera in his car to look up people's skirts when he gave them rides in the community. One of the people in said tournament is from Japan, where they have a bigger problem with such behaviour, and spotted him doing it, calling him out in it. Police were called, and after he refused to have the car inspected, an arrest was made. The amount of incidents in this hobby nearby has sharply decreased due to the citywide code of conduct, so I hope I don't get any more stories for you. Have a nice day everybody and play fair. Yours sincerely, the defective medical bot. Okay, that wasn't too egregious, but it was a bit mental. But on the other hand, I can see certain ne'er-do-wells in the hobby doing stuff like this, so, you know, it is what it is. That was odd. That was odd. I just don't understand. Again, it was your brevity there. You went, oh yeah, this guy did this thing with the camera. Moving on. It's like, dude, no, I want more context. Why? How long had he been doing it for? How was he caught? How did this Japanese girl see what he was doing? Let me know. Like, follow it up. That'd be really cool if you did. Anyway, I love you all a long time. I will speak to you over the weekend for some more streams, and I will be back on Monday with some more Hobby Nightmares, and Tuesday we'll be doing that lovely 40k rant. So I'll see you then. Have a good one. Bye now.